What does global change look like? How does it begin? Daybreak says that global change begins with a fiction. In so many ways, this cooperative game of combating climate change is truthful. It intermixes real-world initiatives, science, technology, industries, movements, and events with speculative but realistic ones to create a simulation of what it would look like to actually successfully reduce global temperature rise and carbon emissions. But at the heart of it, there is a fiction that feels impossible in our world. It's like non-Euclidean geometry. It all works as long as you can fudge the core principle. My first time playing Daybreak, I was handed a player board. China. Elaine sat opposite me, she was playing the United States. Each player also gets a tailored set of 5 cards with things you can do. My board was dominated with brown tokens with cars, cows, factories, apartment blocks, and on a separate tab, ones with lightning symbols with a smidge of similar green lightning symbol ones at the end. Those symbolize dirty and clean energy respectively, with dirty energy creating carbon cubes, which then get absorbed by forests and oceans, but the excess goes towards the temperature rise track. All the other brown tokens create 1 carbon as well. Each time you fill up one section of the temperature rise track, global temperature increases by 0.1 degrees Celsius. Which is all a very long way of saying that each of these brown tokens makes 1 carbon cube, and then the carbon increases the temperature, and when the temperature reaches 2.0 degrees Celsius, that's game over. And boy, does that carbon stack up fast. It is genuinely terrifying. The math here is quite simple. In a 4-player game, China, Europe, US, and the affectionately named majority world will generate a total of 80 carbon cubes per round. 40 of them will be absorbed by forests and oceans, and the other 40 will go to the temperature track. It takes only 20 carbon cubes to increase the temperature by 0.1 degrees Celsius, which means that if nothing changes, we lose the game in 4 rounds. I can guarantee you that if you were sat here instead of me presented with this challenge in the solvable medium of board game, your immediate instinct will be to go, well, not if I do something about it first. It's a very human feeling. There's a problem, I will solve it. Just give me some time and a beverage. But you are not playing a person. You are playing a major world power. In Daybreak, you can and will solve climate change. Each player gets 5 cards to start with, placed in front of them, each representing a column of more potential cards to be played later. Clean electricity plants lets me make new green energy production at the cost of discarding a card, and dirty electricity phase out lets me remove dirty energy tokens from my player board for the same cost. Finally, green tech exports lets me give some of my green power plants to other players, letting them safely remove their carbon-belching power plants without upsetting local communities. Teamwork, synergy, plan, nice. China giving USA, Europe, and the rest of the world ecological power plants like they are best buds. Are you beginning to see the fiction? At the bottom of the green tech exports card, there is a little QR code. If you scan it, it will take you to Daybreak's dedicated website, where an article on this card and its real-world basis awaits. In it, you can read up on how China is investing heavily into green technology with the specific aim of making it exportable, foreseeing it as a main economic driver in the future. As a little aside, in fact, every single card in the game has a QR code like that, with a corresponding article that won't just teach you on how this thing functions in the real world or how it's meant to hypothetically function in the future, but also a rules glossary on questions on rule functionality within the game. I've never ever seen a game do this before, and wow! Wow, this is amazing. I know QR codes are kind of gauche, but you can just go to the website anyway, and every single card has an article with so much background and rules information within the medium of board games. This is revolutionary. This version of events is a lot more grounded and pragmatic. It's easier to understand why any major world power would facilitate global cooperation in ecological improvement, personal financial gains. money. You could say Daybreak is a board game and therefore has no room for intricacies of finance, that this economic benefit to each participant has been abstracted away. But you still can't ignore that within the scope of play, you're sitting down with your mates, each embodying major global powers, altruistically strategizing and cooperating to stop climate change in synchronous, harmonious lockstep. That is the fiction. And this might come as a bit of a surprise, but I think it is that fiction that makes Daybreak genius. Remember this player board and just how much carbon it was excreting. Removing one dirty energy plant is just not going to be enough. To do that, by the way, I had to activate 2 of my 5 cards and discard 2 of the 5 cards in my hand to reduce my carbon production from 20 to 19, which isn't even a dent in the 80 carbon total all players have been producing. Energy demands also increase every round, and if I don't produce enough energy, I'll get community in crisis tokens. Too many of those, and we've lost the game. I need to increase the effectiveness of these cards, and this is where the game comes alive and becomes enormously fun. You'll notice that by discarding a card, I don't remove a single dirty energy plant, I remove 1 dirty energy plant per regulation tag I have in this card's column. What that means is that if I have spare cards in my hand, I can play them tucking them underneath dirty electricity phase out to increase its effectiveness. Suddenly, by discarding a card, I am removing 2 dirty energy plants. What if we could take that a step further? Instead of tucking a card underneath, I can also overlay my existing cards. Let's say I have fertilizer efficiency and drilling and mining bands in my hand. I could tuck fertilizer efficiency under dirty electricity phase out and play drilling and mining bands overlaying it. Now I have 3 regulation tags, and by activating drilling and mining bands, I remove 2 dirty energy tokens per regulation tag, meaning that's 6 dirty energy, 6 carbon per round, a third of my entire carbon production gone. In my very first game, we've lucked into a powerful fusion energy plant production combo and effective dirty energy removal, and by the end of round 2, both China and USA were running entirely green energy. We still had various carbon emissions from cars, cows, factories and such, but it felt like such an achievement. I can't describe how ridiculously pleasing that feels both in gameplay and just raw human goodness sense. And that's just a very basic example of the sort of combo nonsense that Daybreak lets you get away with. Plant a forest, then overlay it, then plant another forest, then overlay it, then plant another 2 forests, overlay that, now make 2 oceans. Establish universal healthcare for a country with an already staggering amount of social support, and you can shower yourself with an obscene amount of social resistance tokens, making you immune to certain crises. In gameplay terms, these end-of-round crises are scary because they're unknown bad things that can upend your plans. So, in effect, universal healthcare removes your fear. Also, you can spend surplus tokens to plant more trees. People are healthier. They're happy to help out. Crucially, there's no turn order in Daybreak. Everyone hatches their own plans, and the cooperation happens through communication rather than careful tracking of everyone's effects. You ask other nations how they can assist, what resources have they got spare, what combinations are they brewing, and whether they match with their own. The action is almost real time. There's a buzz and electricity in the room. Everybody's working. It feels like you are hacking the world. At times I felt almost rude at how much I could bend and manipulate the game's systems to engineer some sort of exploit. I felt like I was cheating. I had to watch another person's playthrough just to make sure that I wasn't doing something illegal in my abuse of the mechanisms, but no, I was playing as intended. And then it dawned on me, of course, it's meant to be like that. Let me be FK with you here. I am tired of global warming. Not the phenomenon, but the futility. Take aside the people who choose to not believe in it because it's just more convenient not to, and consider how we talk about climate change. There is a cavalcade of scientific research, papers, studies that I could bring out to really hammer in the severity of the situation. For example, Matt McGrath on the BBC writes that it is now estimated we'll breach the 1.5 Celsius tipping point by 2029. That's 5 Essenspiels away. Here's a piece by Jonathan Watts in The Guardian quoting Professor Simon Wilcock. We could realistically be the last generation to see the Amazon. Ironically, the only Amazon I've ever seen is the underpaid lad who brings a parcel in a fume-covered minivan that he has to drive so fast he has to pee inside a plastic bottle that he then chucks out the window. It is so sad. Article upon article, study upon study, mountains of evidence, real-world impact, like California is completely flooded right now, and when it is not flooded, it is on fire. One of the designers of this game lives in California. Can someone check in on him? Matt, are you alright? It is happening right in front of our faces, and I alone, as an individual, cannot do anything about it. And you know what? The world's gonna be fine. It's not gonna turn into a 450 degree sulfuric acid atmosphere hellhole like Venus. Humanity is gonna be fine. But collapse of civilization is an unavoidable certainty. Billions of deaths from starvation, displacement, within my lifetime if I'm lucky to live that long. I am tired of being unable to change anything on an individual level. I am tired of governments walking back promises to cut back emissions. I am tired of oil barons leading climate talks. I am tired of plastic companies spending billions to fund projects that spread misinformation. I am tired of billionaires wasting money on inventing brain chips or building giant doomsday bunkers in Hawaii. And I am really tired of that stupid boat in Miami. I mean, Florida, what are you thinking? After California, you're next. Daybreak does not want to speak about the fight against climate change like I just did. It avoids being didactic and somber. It genuinely wants you to have fun exploring all these ideas and how they could work. I'm not the first person to notice this fiction. Critiquing Daybreak as an accurate simulation is absurdly easy. Of course, a board game cannot reflect how the real world works, and it has to start with this fiction of cooperation and camaraderie, because that's the only way this works, within gameplay and in the real world. I think this framing is intentional. If we can just get to this starting point, the cards fall like dominoes. Policies, infrastructure, science, education, engineering, community spirit feeding into one powerful combo. Daybreak wants you to save the world and feel good doing it. It wants to show you how easy it would be. Admittedly, we lost our first game of Daybreak just on the last flip of a crisis card. And then my script says, say something profound about the world not having a one-up. But once we felt it out, once we got a handle on things like which global projects to pick, which are these multiplayer initiatives that can really swing the game in a different direction, like doubling the number of nuclear energy you produce, Daybreak felt like a cool breeze, which is ironic because cool breezes is something we'll lose if we don't sort this out. All of you crunch folk don't need to worry. There's a challenge deck in the game adding extra stipulations for what counts as success. It's a modern co-op design. It's variable and mutable in its difficulty. If you're not feeling that wildfire burn, just add like 5 of these, difficulty reestablished. That's just how it goes with this game. It tells its story so well. I thought there must be something that pays for that. Some fault, like, hey, it sacrifices difficulty to tell that story. But no, Daybreak blends the gamey jus that we've come to expect from fun board games and simulationist storytelling that appears in more intricate and clunkier games with seamless effort, gorgeous artwork, and a zero plastic production with accessibility aids, modular difficulty, and a solo mode that, if you think about it, has narrative implications. I cannot find a single thing to criticize in Daybreak. It will not save the world. A board game cannot do that, but it'll show you 1,000 ways it could work, and it'll let you have fun exploring it. It'll give you hope, just as long as the world meets it exactly where it starts. Which all leads to the question, can subscribing save the world? And you know what? I think yes. If you subscribe to us, you'll get more videos from one of the world's few independent board game reviewers. We don't work with publishers, we don't accept review copies, we don't accept their sponsorships. And we're entirely supported by viewers like yourselves via that website called Patreon, where you give us a bit of money every month, and in return you'll get bonus episodes of our podcast. So I think you have to subscribe now, because you just can't not take that chance to, not save the world. Was that too much? No, I think it was fine.